Stop giving your power away. Every time you bend for someone else's approval, you shrink. Tonight, I'm going to show you what emotionally strong people never do for validation and how doing the same can change your life forever. Emotionally strong people never sacrifice their self-respect to gain approval. And this principle is the foundation of their inner power. It's a boundary that they set early on in life, often without even realizing it at first, but once they recognize it, it becomes an unshakable pillar of their character. You see, self-respect is not something that can be borrowed. It cannot be earned through other people's praise, and it certainly cannot be traded for someone else's fleeting approval. Those who are emotionally strong understand that giving away their dignity, even in small ways, is like giving away pieces of themselves, and once lost, those pieces are not easily reclaimed. This is why they approach interactions with a sense of awareness that many people never develop. They recognize the subtle ways in which society, peers, and even loved ones try to coax them into self-compromise, and they resist with quiet determination. They do not allow compliments to inflate them artificially, nor do they allow criticism to deflate their sense of worth. Instead, they maintain an internal compass, one that points not toward external validation, but toward self-alignment, integrity, and personal standards. When emotionally strong individuals face situations where others attempt to manipulate them through praise or approval, they respond differently than most. While many people are quick to bend, adjust, or overextend themselves just to receive a nod of acknowledgement, the emotionally strong pause, reflect, and measure their actions against their own principles. They ask themselves, does this choice honor who I am? Does it align with my values? If the answer is no, they refuse. They might smile, nod, or politely disengage, but internally, they are anchored in their self-respect. This refusal is not arrogance, nor is it rebellion. It is a conscious choice to preserve integrity, to preserve the parts of themselves that are not negotiable. They understand that the approval of others is often conditional, temporary, and shallow, whereas self-respect is a constant, lifelong resource that feeds confidence, resilience, and peace of mind. One of the most important aspects of this mindset is their ability to separate action from identity. Many people mistake external praise or disapproval as a reflection of their worth. A compliment becomes a lifeline, a criticism becomes a source of insecurity, and every interaction turns into a test of validation. But emotionally strong people refuse to play that game. They recognize that their actions can be judged, their ideas can be debated, and their choices can be questioned, yet none of that defines who they are at their core. They understand that self-respect is an internal metric, not an external scoreboard. By holding this understanding firmly in place, they can navigate social pressures, workplace politics, and personal relationships without losing themselves. They move through life with the calm assurance of someone who knows that their value is inherent and that trying to earn it from others is both unnecessary and dangerous. It is also worth noting that this kind of strength is not born from isolation or ego. On the contrary, emotionally strong people are often deeply empathetic, compassionate, and socially aware. They care about the feelings of others, they value connection, and they listen attentively. But even in the midst of their empathy, they maintain a boundary that protects their self-respect. They understand the difference between humility and self-erasure, between kindness and self-sacrifice for the sake of approval. This is why they can navigate conflicts without losing themselves, why they can disagree without resentment, and why they can uphold their values even when the crowd demands conformity. In their presence, people often feel inspired, not intimidated, because the emotionally strong model a rare form of courage, the courage to be oneself without needing permission. Another critical aspect of not sacrificing self-respect for approval is the way emotionally strong people handle rejection or disapproval. Unlike those who depend on validation, they are not devastated when others do not approve of them. They do not twist themselves into shapes. They do not fit just to gain acceptance, nor do they dwell on imagined slights or perceived judgments. Instead, they view rejection as information, not as a verdict on their worth. They observe, they learn if necessary, and then they move forward unshaken. This mindset requires a remarkable degree of emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and discipline, because it is far easier to chase validation than to stand alone with your dignity intact. But emotionally strong people understand that the cost of bending for approval is far greater than the temporary comfort of acceptance. Every time they preserve their self-respect, they reinforce their inner authority and expand the sphere of influence they have over their own lives. In practical terms, refusing to compromise self-respect manifests in countless small, often invisible ways. It shows up in conversations where they decline to gossip, manipulate, or flatter for advantage. It appears in relationships where they refuse to tolerate disrespect, dishonesty, or emotional manipulation. It emerges in work situations where they will not overextend themselves to please a boss, colleague, or client at the expense of their principles. Each act of refusal, each boundary set and maintained, is a testament to their strength. Over time, these small decisions compound into a reputation of reliability, integrity, and emotional authority. People instinctively recognize that such individuals are not easily swayed, and while some may resent it at first, most come to respect it, even if from a distance. The underlying truth is that emotionally strong people have discovered a paradox. The more they refuse to compromise themselves for approval, the more naturally they earn respect, admiration, and influence. Others sense authenticity, reliability, and self-possession, and they are drawn to it. Ironically, the very thing that emotionally strong people avoid, seeking approval, becomes the very thing they attract. But this is not by design. It is a byproduct of living in alignment with one's values, upholding one's standards, and refusing to let others define your worth. They understand that chasing validation is a never-ending treadmill, but standing firm in self-respect is a lifelong practice that pays dividends in confidence, clarity, and emotional freedom. Finally, it is important to recognize that this kind of emotional strength is available to anyone willing to cultivate it. It is not an innate trait limited to a select few. It can be developed through awareness, reflection, and consistent practice. Every time you notice yourself bending for approval, every time you recognize a moment when you are tempted to trade dignity for acceptance, you have an opportunity to strengthen your emotional resilience. By making the conscious choice to preserve your self-respect, to hold yourself to your standards, and to refuse validation-seeking behaviors, you build the foundation for a life that is authentic, empowered, and emotionally unshakable. Emotionally strong people don't let others' opinions dictate their worth or decisions, and this principle sets them apart in every area of life. From the moment they begin to recognize their own inner authority, they understand that allowing external judgment to control their emotions, choices, or self-perception is a trap that leads to dependence, insecurity, and a constant cycle of trying to please everyone around them. Most people operate on a pendulum of external validation. A compliment lifts them temporarily, criticism crushes them, and every decision becomes a negotiation with the expectations of others. But emotionally strong individuals have learned to break free from this cycle. They recognize that opinions are subjective, often uninformed, and almost always fleeting. No matter how persuasive or persistent someone else's view may be, it does not define the essence of who they are. This realization gives them a freedom most people never experience. The freedom to act according to their own principles, to pursue their goals without hesitation, and to remain steady amidst the storms of judgment and gossip. This refusal to surrender to others' opinions begins with self-awareness. Emotionally strong people know themselves deeply. They know their values, their goals, their limits, and their priorities. Because they possess this clarity, the judgments of others have far less power over them. When a colleague criticizes their approach, a friend questions their choices, or society questions their unconventional path, they listen if necessary, but they do not automatically internalize these judgments. They are able to evaluate feedback objectively, separating what is useful from what is irrelevant, separating fact from projection, and separating advice from opinion. By doing so, they maintain a sense of control over their own lives, making choices that are aligned with their authentic self rather than choices aimed at appeasing others. Another key aspect of this mindset is emotional detachment from external approval. Many people are emotionally dependent on the judgments of others. They feel elated when praised and devastated when criticized. This creates a life dictated by external forces, where every action is a performance and every word is a calculated attempt to maintain favor. But emotionally strong people do not play this game. They understand that emotional stability comes from within, that their worth is not contingent upon someone else's fleeting perspective. By keeping their sense of self separate from external opinions, they achieve a level of freedom and confidence that allows them to act decisively and authentically, even in challenging circumstances. This approach also changes the way they interact with criticism and conflict. While many people react defensively, angrily, or with insecurity when confronted with disapproval, emotionally strong individuals maintain composure. They do not attack the messenger, nor do they crumble under perceived judgment. Instead, they pause, assess the situation, and respond in a manner consistent with their values. They may consider whether the feedback has merit, they may clarify misunderstandings, or they may simply let the opinions pass without reaction. This does not mean they are indifferent or cold. It means they prioritize self-sovereignty over approval. In doing so, they avoid unnecessary drama, conserve emotional energy, and maintain their inner equilibrium. In relationships, refusing to let others' opinions dictate their worth becomes even more critical. Emotionally strong people do not allow partners, friends, or family to undermine their confidence or coerce them into compromising their values. They do not settle for relationships in which their voice is muted or their boundaries are disrespected. While they are empathetic, supportive, and caring, they never confuse compromise with surrender, and they never allow love or loyalty to be used as a lever against their self-determination. This creates relationships built on mutual respect rather than dependency, interactions where both parties thrive rather than one bending constantly to satisfy the other, and connections where authenticity, rather than approval seeking, is the currency of trust. In professional life, the same principle applies. Emotionally strong people are not manipulated by office politics, peer pressure, or the desire to be liked by superiors. They make decisions based on competence, integrity, and alignment with long-term goals, not on whether someone else will approve or praise them. They are not immune to criticism or accountability, but they are immune to the need for constant affirmation. This allows them to take calculated risks, lead with clarity, and innovate without fear of judgment. Others may initially misunderstand their independence or question their methods, but over time, they earn respect for their consistency, reliability, and ability to act from a place of principle rather than fear. The cultivation of this mindset requires discipline and conscious practice. Every day presents moments in which the opinions of others could sway a decision, distort self-perception, or trigger emotional reactions. Emotionally strong people train themselves to recognize these moments and respond differently. They pause before reacting, they remind themselves of their internal standards, and they evaluate whether the input they are receiving has relevance or authority over their life. This deliberate attention to internal guidance rather than external influence strengthens their self-trust, which becomes a feedback loop reinforcing independence and emotional resilience. An essential part of not letting others' opinions dictate decisions is mastering the internal dialogue. Emotionally strong people monitor the stories they tell themselves. They replace thoughts like, "They'll think less of me if I do this," with, "Does this align with my values and goals?" They recognize that much of the stress caused by external judgment is self-generated, a product of internalizing imagined expectations. By maintaining an internal narrative that prioritizes self-alignment over approval, they preserve emotional energy, maintain focus, and act with clarity and integrity. Ultimately, refusing to let others' opinions dictate one's worth or decisions is not about stubbornness, arrogance, or isolation. It is about sovereignty, clarity, and freedom. It is about creating a life where your choices reflect who you truly are rather than who someone else wants you to be. Emotionally strong people demonstrate daily that while opinions will always exist, both positive and negative, their impact is determined not by external volume, but by internal permission. By maintaining this boundary, they navigate life with a sense of authority that is felt by others, even if not always understood. They preserve their dignity, and they model a standard of emotional strength that others naturally gravitate toward, respect, and ultimately admire.